So hi everybody and welcome. Thanks for joining us. We have quite the cast of characters. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Big Fish, but this is kind of like that movie. Not that everybody's a circus character, but the collection of people who knew Dad was pretty diverse and pretty far out there, and it's wonderful to see all these folks online. Why don't we first start by letting everybody know who's here. I just want to thank you for being here. Sherry and I in particular want to thank folks for coming and taking time out of their Saturday to remember Dad and share their thoughts about him. For the folks online, I'm going to unmute everybody at the moment. During the course of if you're not speaking, please mute yourself because otherwise there may well be some background noise. This is being recorded just so everybody knows, and we'll post it on Facebook at some point so people can take a look at it if they want to. If anything comes up, you can always type a message in the chat box and let us know if there's a problem or you need some help, and we'll be happy to do it. So with that said, let me first let you know who's in the room here. Let me unmute it and let folks in the room introduce themselves and how they know Dad, and then we'll go to the folks on the phone. So I'm Scott Schang, Jack's son.
Sherry, pain in the butt for most of his life.
And I'm Maria. I'm a friend of Scott and Doug's. I knew them in Washington, and now I live in Tampa.
My name's Deborah, and I've had the pleasure of knowing Jack for many years through Sherry.
Sorry guys, I'm Jack's favorite.
I'm a liar.
I'm a support group.
Yeah.
Jen.
That was Brandy, by the way.
I'm Lynn, one of Jack's nieces.
And I'm Tom, Lynn's husband.
I'm Roger. I worked for Jack in the 70s when he was young and I was younger.
And I'm Bonnie Will, Roger Scott's.
And I'm Bill Tickle. I worked for Jack for many, many years at PIE, Ryder PIE, PIE Nationwide, and so forth. The most interesting man I've ever met in my life. Many ways. Great guy.
Nice.
John Bowron. I've known Jack for 46 years. We'll talk about that if the time allows.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Cleta Bowron, and I met Jack in 1972 when I went to work for Jack at North America.
Right.
I'm Jeff Miller, married to Mary Walker Miller, making the grand entrance. Every time Jack needed some help with one of his properties, I was the one on the other end of the call most of the time. Awesome guy, though, for the short time I got to know him.
Thanks, John. And Mary's joined us.
Hi, I'm Mary. I am Jack's realtor and have loved him for years. That his daughter has been a good friend. His ex-wife's been a good friend. I'm missing him.
Thanks, everybody. So you can see the wide cast of characters here, and we've got an even wider cast of characters online. So why don't we let folks introduce themselves. Uncle John, Aunt Barb.
I'm Barb, Jack's sister-in-law.
I'm John, the oldest and wisest and handsome.
I'm Sue, the oldest niece.
Mom and Doug, and then Joyce.
Hi, I'm Marlene. I was married to Jack between 1959 and 1980.
My name's Doug, and I am Jack's son-in-law and avid story listener.
I'm Joyce McCarty, and I am friends of Scott.
And Joan, do you want to go next? Sorry, I'm kind of going through the boxes. So.
Yeah, where's my box? It disappeared.
There we go.
I'm Joan. I am Jack's younger sister. This is my son John, his nephew.
Who's apparently
There he is. Oh. He sounds just like his uncle, doesn't he?
He does. Yeah. I'm going to let others introduce themselves because everybody's kind of a jumble on my screen.
Go ahead.
Just bow in and introduce yourself.
Who's next?
I am Christy. I'm Jack's niece. Hi, I'm Chandra. I'm friends of, or a friend of Scott and Doug's.
Hi, I'm Gwen. I'm Jack's niece, and I'm over in Fiji. It is 6 a.m. Sunday morning here, so hi to everybody.
Hi, I'm Anita, and I worked at the first retirement home Jack moved to North Carolina at.
How about Les and JB and
I am in the
Steve?
middle of memorial service. Please call me again later in 2 hours. Thank you. Bye.
We've also got Sarah Rouse, who was also a hospice nurse for Dad. I see Eric Monroe, Steve Hindeman, and Les Goldner. Other names, I don't see names, I just see phone numbers. So I can't really tell folks.
Yep.
Annalita's there? Great.
I'm Jim Martin.
Jim, would you like to describe to folks how you know the family?
Yeah, I worked with Jack back in the Pepsi days, back from 1972 on for a few years, and known him since then. Enjoyable man. Enjoyed my time with him. Of course, I was always, I think, chaperoned by Bowron or Terry, so that made it different. Sorry for your loss.
Thank you, Jim. Well, I think Becky's on the line as well from hospice and others. I can't see everybody. So why don't we go ahead and get started? I'm going to go ahead and mute folks again for a bit until it's time to share again. So again, thank you for coming. It's really been hard to know how to do this, how to get folks together from so many places. So far, knock on wood, it seems to be working. And I'm really grateful that you're here. How to remember someone who had such a big personality, who lived in so many places, did so many different things, has been pretty difficult. And so mostly what I'd like to do is just to let people share their thoughts and remembrances of Dad and be there. Cheryl can't be with us, unfortunately, Dad's third wife, because she's traveling right now, but she sends her thoughts and sent a poem that we'll read. So I'll share some thoughts. We'll have some thoughts from Sherry, Roger, John, myself, Mom first. To kind of get us kicked off. And then we'll open it up to the audience to let anybody who'd like to share. You're encouraged to do so. We have the room until 3, so we've got plenty of time. Just so you guys know where we're at Sawgrass Marriott, which is a place where Sherry and I remember for their brunches growing up. Dad lived across the street for 20 years or so. So this was somewhat of like a bit of a homecoming in some ways as well. So I'm going to start by opening up the microphone to Mom, Marlene. Just a second, Mom, just a second. Okay, you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you, Scott. It's just wonderful to be with all of you. It will come as no surprise when I say, with Jack, it was the best of times and the worst of times. But together, we sure got it right with our Scott. I'm so grateful for that and for Jack. Jack, may you rest in peace, and may the good Lord smile on your soul.
Thank you, Mom. And thank you, Douglas, for staying back in North Carolina and being with Mom and the pups and everything.
What happened?
We can't hear you, Scott.
Sorry, I unmuted myself. I muted myself. I didn't talk over Mom. Let me mute you guys real quick. So I'm really grateful to have had Dad as a father and as a friend in some ways. I think one story that kind of tells about our relationship was when we moved to Chicago in the 1970s. I was about 10 and I got a paper route, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. We also got over 100 inches of snow for several winters. And one morning we had a blizzard and I woke up and there was no way for me to get my sled through the snow drifts to deliver the papers. And so I woke Dad up at 4:30 in the morning and said, I need your help. And he didn't complain at all. He said, okay. And he got out the giant yellow Allied Company Cadillac and put me in the driver's seat and off we went. So I drove the Cadillac at age 11 through the snow drifts while he ran from the car to the people's houses delivering the papers. How I didn't run him over or take out mailboxes, I don't know, but that was Dad's way of parenting and it was great. Dad was a man of words, and I think his words really defined him. And so a lot of what I've done over the past couple of weeks was look to see what was there. And I found some words and some writings, but I'll admit to being somewhat disappointed because I think many of us encouraged him over the years to write and to kind of put down his stories and to write what he thought about. And he didn't do very much of that, unfortunately. And I kind of was perplexed about that, but then found something that I think explains why that might have happened. His only school memento that I saw was a paper he wrote for high school debate, which he received an A for Miss Thornburg, by far his favorite teacher who he adored and worshiped. And it was a paper describing debate, the theory of debate and how it worked. And the very last line of the paper was, I also agree with ex-Governor Schriker when he said, writers record history, but speakers make history. And I think that's what Dad thought. He was there to make history, not just to record it. So writing probably didn't really resonate with him that much. There was a pile of note cards I found that seemed to be a speech or a class he was writing about business ethics. And he noted that there were many old ways, there was an old way of seeing business as a war against your competitors and playing win-lose. He said that time was over and that businesses were now should be spending about 50% of their time being sure the other side got its needs met. And that there was an ecosystem of customers, competitors, and suppliers working towards who could best fulfill the need. Well, it was a really great way to think about business and kind of define who Dad was in the business world. Others here may share other things that disagree with that, we'll find out. Perhaps most interesting, he didn't have many things in his purse. Those of you who knew him knew he carried a little black purse that had his stuff in it. I bought him one in Paris or in France made out of rubber that was too small, but he kept on using it because I bought it for him, even though it was too small. And in that there was only one quote that he had handwritten out. And it said, but the old warrior, not as nimble as before, battles on, racing the clock, refusing to consider that his mission may be impossible. There are a few others that'll, I think those of you who didn't know him as well, give you a little bit better sense of him. One piece of paper said, oh my God, I have known all along, I just did not know that I knew. Everyone in the world can see your blind spots except you. And the answer to the great mystery of life is that there's no mystery. So there was a couple of poems that were a little bit unusual for Dad that seemed to fit kind of the time that he was a little bit more curious and more introspective and wondering about where life was at and what was going on. And those of us who got to be with him in North Carolina got to spend some time, I think, with him talking and thinking about those things and some of his own struggles about his own mind and controlling his own impulses. And I'll share one of those with you. I think it's more about Jack the man in private that some who knew him publicly didn't know as much about. It reads, in order to achieve, let go. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. When I let go of what I have, I receive what I need. When I give, I become more. When I desire nothing, a great deal comes to me. And when I fear nothing, I become eternal. So there was also one that I enjoyed that was kind of fun, which said, came from the 70s when he was thinking about whether to join the group of people looking for the sunken Spanish galleon, the Concepcion. And it said, what a better thing to do for my third midlife crisis than to play with a bunch of little boys and pirates. So that's what he did, and they had a lot of fun. And finally, the last one I'll share, which reminds me very much of Dad, who is the consummate storyteller. And we all heard him tell the same story, I think Sherry and I in particular, many times. But we never once stopped him or asked him to stop because it was wonderful. And what he wrote was, Now, if you've heard this story before, don't stop me because I so enjoy hearing myself tell it. So that's Dad from me. So those of you who knew our family knew that my name is Scott, but many probably don't know that. I think I'm Dan or Danny because he always called me Dan or Danny. And when he was at the last place in North Carolina and not as clear for a couple of weeks, one of the nurses finally said, "Who is Dan or Danny? Is this a long lost relative?" And I'm like, "No, it's me." And that's what he's talking to. So to end my part, I'd like to ask my friend Joyce, who I've known since 1988, when I first moved to Washington, D.C. at Cleary Gottlieb, Joyce McCarty, to share something with us. And she's been a blessing in my life and a real friend for all these years. So Joyce, can I turn it over to you? Joyce, let me find you before you begin. I can't, just a sec. Where is Joyce? Thank you. Okay, Joyce, now you're unmuted.
Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the flowers are falling. 'Tis you must go and I must bide. But come you back one summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hush and white with snow. 'Tis I bathe in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so. And when you come and all the flowers are dying, if I am dead, as dead I well might be, you come and find the place where I am lying, and kneel and say an Ave there for me, and I shall hear those soft you tread about me, and all my grief will warmer, sweeter be. For you will bend and tell me that you love me, and I shall sleep in peace until you come to me.
Thank you, Joyce. I love you so much. That was wonderful. Thank you for doing that. So unfair, I'm now going to turn it over to Roger to follow that. So Roger, if you want to sit here, it'll be easier for people to hear you, I think.
I remember. No.
You're acting like Jack. To me, Jack was diverse. He was process-oriented, but also eager to explore the unknown. He could be critical and caring at the same time. He took a chance on me when I was still wearing a slide rule on my belt in my early 20s. He was a great mentor because of his outspoken insightfulness that propelled me into a successful 45-year career. Jack remained a good friend. He will be missed. Rest in peace, my dear friend.
Thank you, Roger. John Barlin shared an email from Dan Abramovich about Dad that I wanted to share real quick, and then I'll turn it over to John. Dan wrote about time at Ryder PIE, and he said that Dad helped form my character traits, especially around how to deal with conflict and perseverance. He could sell you on almost anything, as he did to me, going to Ryder PIE. The events that unfolded there are an unbelievable chapter in my life that they don't teach you in school, such as financial turmoil, dealing with the mob, dealing with multiple personalities with tainted past and aliases, how to tell corporate IU they didn't do their due diligence and made a huge mistake, how to partner with outside counsel and auditors to conduct a private investigation to protect the fiduciary rights of employee owners against the Teamsters, fighting fire with fire by getting the Teamster mugs to deal with the thugs, getting bimbos off the payroll that the mob owners put on, telling the bank not to cash a $100,000 check with the thugs standing at the teller window looking for cash, protecting the $45 million management pension plan that the thugs wanted to take and replace with junk stock, dealing with a US labor investigation for 5 years afterwards and developing the fortitude to tell the mob ring leader, Chris Janthel, that I knew who they were and I didn't want anything to do with them, as well as trying to get me to sign a 3-year contract. In 10 short months, 10 months, I developed experiences of a lifetime and an understanding that trust and integrity will forever guide my way of being. God bless Jack Schang. And Dad does tell a story about being in the Teamsters office in Washington after the corporate parent sold the company for junk after selling the Teamsters the stock and not wondering if he'd be able to walk out alive or not. So with that, John Bauer.
Sorry. I missed it. Sorry.
No, it was fine.
So Scott, we just talked to this this computer here. Yep. Okay. I first met Jack in July 1974 when on the 4th of July weekend, I went to Fort Wayne for an interview. And really no intention of taking that job. But first of all, the headhunter had told me, I thought it was Fort Worth. And at the last minute found out it was Fort Wayne. And the trucking industry just had no glamour to me. So, but I went because my good friend, the headhunter, prevailed on me. He thought that this could well be a fit. So on a Saturday morning, I had an 8 o'clock 1 hour with Jack that lasted almost all day. And at the end, he said, I think we should go on with this. And I said, well, I wasn't quite sure yet, even though I was really starting to lean in that direction. And so I copped out and I said, well, you know, Jack, I've got a son who's a senior, going to be a senior in high school, and that's a tough year to move him, and particularly to a place like Fort Wayne. And he said, well, tell you what, why don't you go home, gather up your wife and that son, and bring them back for a weekend, and let me talk to them. So I did that. I did that 2 weeks later, and Jack got his claws into my son, and the rest is history. It quickly became apparent as I went to work in Fort Wayne that Jack's management style was unique. He was brilliant, conceptual, moody, flamboyant, thoughtful, fearless, but most of all, never for a loss of words. Case in point, we were having a tough year. It was a tough year in the marketplace, and we went in and there was a review with the headquarters group out of Tulsa on a Saturday morning right before Christmas. And we figured that we didn't know what was going to happen because our results were really pretty poor. So I show up in, in my winter casual garb for a Saturday morning meeting, and it was a blizzard outside, as I recall. And Jack showed up in his tuxedo. And I thought that was the greatest deflective move I've ever seen. Anyway, he claimed that what had happened was he got home late the night before when he was supposed to be packing to go to Florida, and Marlene had thrown his clothes out onto the snowbank. I never really verified that, but it made a nice connection. Going into 1975, we were neighbors across the fairway in Fort Wayne, and it was a great opportunity. We played a lot of golf. We worked very hard. Sometimes we played golf into the evening, as we oftentimes would stop at neighbors and have a quick adult beverage. And then it all came to an end. Jack left and moved to Chicago and became president of Allied. You fixing the thing?
Yeah, we're good.
And Pepsi responded by sending me to Canada as president of Canada operation. So the next time I really saw, we kept in touch, but didn't really see each other until 1982, when Jack, by this time, lived in Lafayette, California, is with PIE. The headquarters was in Walnut Creek. And I was out at Stanford for a 14-week executive program. And I took the weekends off and spent a lot of time spending time with Jack, playing golf and just having a great time. And so in 1984, 2 years later, I needed Jack again. And I called him because the railroad had bought North American, and I just determined I wasn't going to work for the railroad. So I called Jack and I said, is there something you can see out there, or somebody I can network with, maybe get a search started to get myself out of here? And Jack says, matter of fact, ironically, we have a job right here in Jacksonville as president of one of our subsidiary companies, and I think you'd be an ideal fit. So I moved down here in 1980, that year, 1984, was here about a year, and IU, which was the parent company, took me up to Philadelphia as group vice president. And and Jack remained, of course, with PIE, Ryder PIE. And so we didn't see much of each other, except we did spend 3 or 4 years, the Thanksgiving weekend in Bermuda at his condo at the St. George's Club, having a great time and playing golf and eating out and touring on our mopeds and laughing a lot and just having great times. And I got us a round of golf at the Mid-Ocean Club, which was this well-known club, and a very stodgy British stuffy club, complete with the doorman during the day who wears white gloves. Well, we decided to take a moped to go rather than a taxi. So when I say moped, I mean a singular one. Jack and I on one moped with two sets of golf clubs. We arrive at the front door with the guy with his white gloves, who quite frankly didn't know what to do. And it went downhill from there, believe me. We set the club back at least 2 or 3 degrees of stodginess. By the mid-1990s, I was back in Jacksonville, and Jack was in San Diego with Qualcomm, and I was winding down my days with Landstar, and I took a role with as a consultant with Qualcomm, and so I spent every other week in La Jolla with Jack, bunking in with him, and we had just a wonderful time. And to set it up best, we went to the finest restaurants and toured the towns, and I would take the charge, and he'd approve my expense account. So it all worked well. By the early 2000s, we were both retired and living in Jacksonville, and I came to ask Jack to rescue me again. Clete and I had decided we wanted to start spending the summers in the cool weather in San Francisco, and we had a condo out there, so Jack agreed to stay in our home for 4.5 months every summer, and that went on for almost 15 years, I guess, up until last year when he was just too sick to do it. And I'll tell you, in both places, both here where we live and in San Francisco where we live, the neighbors will never forget Jack. I got a call from my neighbor in San Francisco, Dave, who lived downstairs, and Dave was concerned about Jack's use of the F-bomb word. Because he was using it out in public, and he was using it in mixed company, and poor old Dave just couldn't understand that. Well, I said to him, I said, you got to understand, Dave, that to Jack, that's a universal word. It's a noun, a verb, an adjective, an adverb, and a pronoun. At home, here, we had a long time to convince Jack, who was really bitten by the environmental bug, that he had to use the air conditioner just to keep the dry air in the house because we were concerned about the mold. So we let him keep it up as high as he wanted, but to leave the compressor on, and that was a hard sell. And then we discovered the last year he was there that he was taking a bucket of water out of the laundry room because it was closer to the water heater, and taking it back to the bathroom in the back of the house because he didn't want to run the water back there until it heated up. So Scott, he had the bug. You gave him the routine. In the winter time for the last 10 years, I guess, I had weekly dinners with Jack on Thursday night when Cleta would go to her dance class. And we had great times. We talked about old times and debated current issues. And I got to tell you, I think you all experienced that Jack loved the debate, and he'd take either side of the debate. It didn't make any difference as long as he debated. And so I think it made his days happy, and he had something to look forward to every week. And I was very happy to be in his company every time. So that said, I hope I made a case that my relationship with Jack was very special. I'm going to miss him terribly, and I hope as he lies in restful and peaceful circumstances that he remembers how much I love him and how much I really owe him. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, John. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I gotta get up out here now.
No, take your time.
Okay.
Yeah, what John said about Dad resting in peace and resting, I'm not sure he wants to do that. I imagine Dad is bouncing around if he can and trying to find some more fun someplace. So I'd like to take a chance now and invite anybody else in the room who'd like to share to come up and share, and then we'll open it up to folks on the phone to share. Anybody else would like to say anything? Okay. We did have a poem. So did somebody want to read Cheryl's poem? Or is that the end? Okay. No pressure. Hey, Steph.
She's gonna do it. She is.
Anybody on the phone would like to contribute? I'm going to unmute everybody, and we'll see if that works or not. So do be aware, if you'd like to, you can mute yourself in case you've got noise coming in the background.
Like telephone calls.
So the floor is open.
Scott, this is Jim Martin. I won't take everybody's time with this, but there's a song that was written by a Canadian by the name of Paul Anka. And the words in that song, to me, absolutely describe your father to me. And that song is My Way. And I won't bore everybody with reading the lyrics to that, but I'd suggest that y'all might want to take a look at that when you get home. That's all I got to say. He's a wonderful man.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. If he were here, he would be singing it for you. And in North Carolina, as he was having some trouble cognitively, he actually just started singing a lot. And when people would say something, he'd just break into song for them. So that was interesting.
Scott, I don't know. Scott, I don't know, what order you want to go in, but I just wanted to share, I think for all of us that we're family members, we all have incredible memories of the intense euchre and pepper games that we shared together. And Jack was just such a fierce competitor, but he'll be so missed. And then the other thing was, if you've ever had a situation where you had a one-on-one with Jack and he gave you your full attention, it made me feel like I was the most important thing in the world at that time. And those are some memories that I will always treasure. And I'll miss your dad so much.
Thanks, Sue.
I could tell a lot of stories, Scott. Because Joni B and I would sit on the couch and we had your dad perform at any age, 6, 8, 12. We in high school, you know, Jack was a sophomore when I was a senior. And we had one thing in common. We enjoyed debate. He always won. Many memories. We killed a lot of Japanese in World War II in our backyard. He envied me because I got to go in the Navy. He had flat feet, so flat he could rock on them, and they wouldn't take him in the service. I think he regretted that all the time. The fact that I flew an airplane really ticked him off. Most of you do not know that in his last days, I spoke to my brother 1 hour every day. And we argued the political scene, and I won't stir that up, but we've really decided that we had to do something. But we didn't know quite what to do other than hire an assassin. All I could say is I woke up this morning thinking, well, Jack, I wonder if you found the answer. He was always asking the question, where does religion fit in this process? I hope he's found the answer. I'll miss him greatly.
Thanks, Uncle John.
Well, I don't feel really worthy to share with this group, but I'm going to, because I only got to see a glimpse of the Jack that you guys are talking about. But at the same time, I got to see the Jack at the end, which has made me a better person. Because we started out debating. I heard stories about almost all of you. I've heard stories about growing up. John, I've heard stories about you. I know y'all talked on the phone. But I also got to see the broken Jack at the end, which nobody really likes to talk about the end. But it was a very loving Jack. I was told when he moved up here not to hug him. He wasn't like that, but that wasn't me and him. We hugged and kissed. He wanted to go back to Florida, and I said, Jack, tell me again why you moved up here. And he said, I moved up here to make Scott's life easier. And that was it. We knew he loved Scott, and he shared the greatest mistakes of his life with me, and I can honestly say I've learned from him just knowing him since June. And I miss my ice cream buddy.
Thanks, Anita. You were great with him, and I really appreciate it. And those daily ice cream trips really helped.
Hi, Scott. It's Becky.
Hey, Becky.
You already know how blessed I feel about having the relationship that your dad and I had. The many, many debates where I asked him, when did you get your nursing license? And he says to me, how long are you going to have yours? And all these things when I was trying to get him to do what I needed him to do. Fought about those Una boots on a daily basis, just cussing me out. And so, you know, I would cuss him out. So I always got him on. I always got done when I needed to get done. He was a true blessing to my life. And I really appreciate being a part of his journey.
Thank you, Becky. You helped a ton, so thank you.
Okay, I have to share a story for Becky, because I don't know if she knows this. So Becky, this was a weekend, and you were off, and y'all sent some young blonde nurse in.
Oh, no.
And she started trying to, I don't know, do some sort of medicine and something. And I just happened to be in the room and just happened to have brought extra ice cream. And when he started cussing her and dropping the F-bomb, that little girl didn't know what to do. So I said, here, Jack, eat some ice cream. And I handed it, and I did like I do with my children. I said, here, eat the ice cream. And he gave me a dirty look, and he ate the ice cream and stopped touching her. So thank you for taking care of him, Becky.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, Dad was still, if a pretty blonde nurse walked in, the whole room stopped. And the only reason I think he actually agreed to move to assisted living was because the woman who came to talk to him was stunning. And he just sat there and said, "You're pretty." The whole time, his answer to everything was, "You're pretty." Would anybody else like to share online?
Just to kind of reiterate with my mom and dad, this is Christy. You know, we talk about the Euchre games and the Pepper games, and those were exciting. But the one memory that Uncle Jack wouldn't let me forget was having to do with his flat feet, and that was when he and I raced around the cabin, and he broke his toe. So I never lived that down, and he never let me live it down. So, but the one thing that Uncle Jack always did was, just like Sue was saying, you know, when you got one-on-one with him, he was very encouraging, especially about education. And he wanted me to, did I get disconnected?
No, you're there. We got you.
Okay, well, for some reason I have a little phone icon, but anyway, so anyway, he just was very, very encouraging, and especially about education. So I loved him dearly, and he will be missed. So
thanks, Kristen.
Yeah, I'd like to say something. I'm not very good at this, but I just want to say that Jack challenged me. I worked with him for about 10 or 15 years, and I worked with him and for him, and he challenged me a lot and made my life miserable at times, but he was probably the funniest guy I knew, and was always, at the end of the day, we always had a decent time. I can recall so many stories being with him, like the time we went into a restaurant in I think it was Naples, Florida, and he liked the pecan pie, and he insisted to the manager that they sell him the whole pie, and they wouldn't do it. He made a fuss. It was the funniest thing you could imagine. And another time we were in Omaha, and it was after a hard day work, and we went out to a restaurant, and they wouldn't serve us. It was too late, but they'd sell us wine and dessert. And we got so wined out that neither of us could drive home. We had to take a cab back to the hotel that night. He was the funniest guy I ever knew. He was really great, and I miss him.
Thank you, Les.
Scott?
Yep. Yeah, please. So Bill Tickle's going to share.
There's so many stories with Jack that I could go over, but we don't have the time here. But when I was executive vice president of PIE, this guy came in, and John Terry brought him in and told us that he'd lead to learn a little bit about our side of the trucking business. He'd always been in the other van business and so forth. And so we spent quite a bit of time with him. Little did I know that he was going to take my place as executive vice president. But obviously, we got together very well. He was a genius in marketing, as far as I'm concerned, in many ways. And I could tell a lot of stories about that. And of course, an awful lot of stories about the F-bomb in meetings and so forth. And I would try to say, Jack, you can't use that word so many times. We get 500 or 300 salesmen in this, and we're trying to introduce the new programs and so forth. And F-bomb was a big blast out there, and I actually even taped him one time. And I said, and I went in his office, I got to play something for you. And he says, what's wrong with that? And I said, you don't know? He says, and I knew, of course, we laughed about that. And then he would always introduce me in the meetings and say, I have to be careful what I'm going to say, because my Christmas businessman friend, Bill Tickle, is going to get on my case. But anyway, we had a lot of fun. One of the great stories I can remember as people reflecting is after IU set us afloat, which of course was unfortunate situation because we didn't have any money because they had taken virtually taken all our money in terms of to try to save IU, which they didn't. And so we had this group of various different owners trying to come in and take over the company. And one of them I remember, and I can't remember which group it was because there were several of them. And supposedly we were really going to make a big deal. And these people were going to put a lot of money into the company and so forth. And we're driving down downtown Jacksonville. And those of you who are familiar with Jacksonville, the tallest building still at this time, there's CSX has a very large building with CSX on the top of it. And he says, see CCX building? See the Independent Life building over there, which is a little taller? It's going to show PIA nationwide. And of course, obviously, that was one of his visions. We thought we were going to have something happen. Unfortunately, it never worked out. But certainly, I would always love and respect Jack for all the wonderful things we did and hope for. God bless you, Jack.
Thanks, Bill. Would anybody else like to share?
Yeah, John Woods, John and Sherry. I always were fun times with Jack, and I recall the time that he and I decided we needed to go out into the backyard and work on our chipping in golf, and so we did that for a while, and finally it got a little boring. So Jack went inside and got 2 bottles of wine, and we put one on one side of the yard and one on the other, and we were chipping back and forth to each other. And needless to say, it became rather dangerous because we probably paid more attention to the wine than we did our chipping. But always was a fun time. You never knew what was going to happen, but it was going to be a time that you could laugh and just have a good time. There was no doubt about that. And so we most certainly give Jack our best, and we most certainly are concerned about you, Scott, and how you are being able to get through all this. And so we all will remember his sense of humor and his laughter, and he most certainly loved and doted over you, Scott, with admiration and pride, and parenting his suggestions. We will miss him, and we wish you well. And we most certainly are, I guess, fortunate that we had all the good times with Jack. And for that, we are thankful.
Thanks, Uncle John. Anybody else like to share?
Hey, Scott. Here we are in San Diego. Am I unmuted? My sister's got a weird look on her face.
Yeah, she's
as if
heard
she can't hear us. So, you know, we just have to echo everyone else's sentiments about how much larger than life our uncle, my uncle and her brother was. We had the opportunity to see him one last time over Labor Day weekend. And both of us were able to tell him what we needed to say about his long life with us, and that we would miss him because we knew we would never see him again. So just want to say words of encouragement to everybody else. We'll miss him, and we love you, Jack.
Thanks, Cuz. Is there anybody else who'd like to share? Oops, John, you're muted if you guys want to talk. No, they've muted themselves. I can't unmute them if they mute.
No, we're all done.
Okay, thanks.
Tears are flowing.
Anybody else?
Move everybody else online.
I'm sure.
Hello. Jack inherited me at a very young age. And unfortunately, he couldn't fire me. So he just had to put up with me for a long time. There are two stories I'm going to tell to kind of show the yin and yang of the dynamic that I had, my personal experiences with him. The first is when I was about 13 years old, and just a teenager. Jack had this little paddle that he kept under the stairs, and it was kind of this warning, like, if you do something wrong, I'm going to spank you with this. And I got into trouble. I did something awful, and I got spanked for it. And that night, we all went to bed, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I went and grabbed the paddle, and I chucked it in the lake behind our house. So nothing was ever said beyond that. Never got spanked. Nobody ever mentioned the paddle. And then years later, I was sitting at brunch with my girls and Jack, and we were talking about child discipline, and he happened to say, yeah, you remember when I spanked your butt with that spatula? And I'm like, yeah, until I chucked it in the lake. And he goes, is that what happened to it? And I said, yes. And he stopped and he looks at me and he goes, good for you. He was a teacher to me. He taught me there was no win or lose. You either win or you learn. He taught me how to think. I am such a better person for having him in my life, and so grateful. One of the other stories I love about him has to do with when we got together with my aunt and uncle and cousins, and we're going out to dinner, and they brought out this dessert tray before we were even starting to order. And my cousins, Laura and David, were really excited about the desserts. And so Jack instantly said, well, we're just going to have one of each before the dinner even started. He's like, sometime in life, you just have to have dessert first. And it became this motto with my cousins. They actually got him a pillow that said, eat dessert first. He had so many different dynamics in his personality. And yes, I definitely learned the F-bomb from him at a very young age. I just want to say I'm so grateful that he was part of my life. And I probably would not be the same person without him. I was gonna read a poem. I was gonna try to read a poem. I don't think I'm gonna be able to get through it. So I'm asking my friend Deborah, who has known Jack for over 20 years as well, to do this one.
You do another Cheryl sent it in.
Sorry,
Another Cheryl sent
my
it
mom
in.
sent this.
So this poem has been sent by Cheryl, Sherry's mom. Honored to be here. Just for the record, I am Jack's favorite friend of Sherry's, just to set the record straight. Yes. The name of the poem is The Bridge Builder. An old man going a lone highway came at the evening cold and gray to a chasm vast and deep and wide, through which was flowing a sullen tide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The sullen streams had no fear for him. But he turned when safe on the other side and built a bridge to span the tide. Old man, said a fellow pilgrim near, you are wasting strength with building here. Your journey will end with the ending day. You never again will pass this way. You've crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build you this bridge at the evening tide? The builder lifted his old gray head. Good friend, in the path I have come, he said. There followed after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. This chasm that has been not to me, to that fair-haired youth may a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I am building this bridge for him. Till we meet again, Jack.
Thanks, Debbie. I think cousin Cindy is trying to share, and we've had trouble unmuting her, so let's see if we can get Cindy Lou Schang on the line.
Am I on?
Yes, you are.
We can hear you.
Okay, can't see me?
Nope.
Oh, well, that's all right. I'm Cindy, middle daughter to John. And to pile on, I would, as far as favorites, I know that I was Uncle Jack's favorite niece, just to put that out there. I have no doubt. What I wanted to say about my Uncle Jack is this. As I grew up and watched Uncle Jack, I thank him for how hard he worked with the family and for the family to keep all of our families connected. As we all moved to California, I moved to Texas, Christy moved to Kansas, Scott, you're out on the East Coast, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you, Uncle Jack, for keeping us all connected, making sure we had family reunions every 4 years. He made an excellent effort to come visit when my children were born. And to him, I thank him very much for that. I thank him for making me laugh, for honestly teaching me how to spin a good tale, and for encouraging Jamie and I as we raised our children. I will miss his laugh. I will miss his stories. Thank you, Uncle Jack.
Thanks, Cindy. Would anybody else like to share?
All right, I'm gonna share.
Okay. Cousin Lynn.
So I wasn't going to say anything because mainly most of my stories about Jack are too raunchy to be recorded. But what I will say is that in the last 10 years of my life, I've had to spend time in Jacksonville for a reason I'd prefer not. But one of the things I always look forward to is I could have dinner or lunch with Jack when I came. And so I would let him know, Uncle Jack, I'm coming to Jacksonville. Are you available? And he'd email me back.
Christy, could you mute yourself, or your chimes are beautiful?
Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. Hold on.
He would email me back, and we'd set it up, and we'd have lunch. And so I got to know Jack, or dinner. We would like to go to the Cheesecake Factory for lunch, Ruby Tuesdays for dinner. And so I got to know Jack as an adult, a one-on-one in a way I hadn't growing up, and without all the other cousins around. And so that was kind of nice. And like I said, we have some raunchy stories that if you want to hit me up at the bar later, I'll tell you. I'm just not going to have them recorded. I will tell you that I knew things were serious when Uncle Jack finally canceled on me. That last time we were scheduled to have dinner, he canceled on me. And so I knew things were not the way they always had been, but I was fortunate enough to see him in July. So I just want to say, got some great raunchy memories. You ever hit me up with a bottle of wine, I'll share them with you. Otherwise, gonna love and miss them. And I still have to come to Jacksonville, but somehow it's just not as fun anymore.
Thanks. Anybody else? Yeah, Mary.
I wasn't going to say anything because I only knew Jack for the last several years and not as close as so many of you, but over the last several months, I got to know him a lot better. I was able to spend time with him, and particularly recently, he became, I always knew him a bit far off because, you know, as a friend, we went to dinner, we did things, but it was, you know, with Sherry and Cheryl, but Jack got a lot more reflective later in life, and it was so neat. I knew he wasn't feeling well. I knew he wasn't doing well. And I knew he just wanted company. I could sense that in him, that he just wanted people around to talk to. So I went over there one day, and in my real estate career, I was looking to build a team. And so I just sat down and talked with him. And I was shocked that he sat there and spent like 3 hours pouring into me strategies that would work and telling me what to watch out for and how to put personalities together and what to think about. And I was just really amazed at his care and concern for me. And when I was going to get married a few years before that, he let me stay at his place. I was his roommate for a while, getting ready to get married. It was just, he was such an interesting character. And yes, every day the F-bomb. Every day. I'm like, Jack, I don't talk like that. Well, I don't effing care. Okay. I'll just listen to it then. But one of the neat things was, on one of the last times I visited him, he did ask me about my religion. He asked me what I thought about God and what I thought about what was to come. And I told him, and he tried to debate with me. And I said, Jack, I appreciate the fact that you like to debate. I understand, you know, Cheryl told me that you guys are master debaters and that was a big part of your life. But I said, Jack, I can only tell you my experience, and I can only tell you what I've come through. And he listened, and he really listened. He listened with an open heart and with open arms. And he said, oh my gosh, Mary, nobody's ever presented it that way before. I understand that you really, really have that relationship. And so I encouraged him to run after God and find him too. And I think he did. I really do think he did. I think he was in a place that he wanted to know, because he knew that the end was coming near. And to me, that was just so touching, that he was always the gruff businessman, arm's length, and then he became this lovable, F-bombing, introspective sweetheart. So, Jack, you're missed. I think you're dancing with Jesus, but that's my opinion. And I hope you're having a great time. Love you.
Well, I hope Jesus drinks wine, because Dad's going to bring a lot. Dad did talk with a lot of us towards the end a lot about what was coming, and he was curious. And he told several people he was very curious to see what would happen. So we'll see. He knows and we don't, and maybe he'll let us know in one way or another. I will share that as Dad was letting go, it was clear he was letting go, but he was still not really gone. And Becky, who you heard from, had told me that she thought that he was finally letting go because he was getting more comfortable and was in less pain. And I think that's right. And when he actually let go was when he'd been pretty out of it for a couple of days, and it was getting later at night. And the nurse had put, not Becky, a nurse from the facility had put oxygen on him and tied it around his neck. And if anybody knows Dad, the one thing he did not like was anything around his neck. If you saw his shirts, they were all cut out. There was no collar. I couldn't give him to Goodwill because he chopped all the collars off. He would use duct tape, all kinds of stuff. So I saw that, and I loosened it and got it off his neck, and he let go, and that was it. So I think once there was nothing more to fight, once there was nothing more to struggle against, is when he let go, which is good. So, but as long as there was something to fight, something to engage, Dad was going to be around. Does anybody else like to share?
Scott, could I share his last laugh with me.
Sure, Mom.
Well, he really suffered at the end, and it was hard for him to laugh about anything. But a couple of months ago, I had moved here to Winston-Salem, and I called Jack and said, my TV technician has been here, and he set up my cable, and in the process, we got into a political discussion. And I said, Jack, in the end, he got the better of me. And Jack said, well, how did he do that? And I said, I can't turn on my TV, but what it isn't said at Fox. And he thought that touched his funny button. And he hadn't laughed like that for so long. And it was so good. He laughed and he laughed and he laughed. And to this day, I watch, when I first turn on my TV, I watch Fox.
Thanks, Mom.
Good note.
Yeah, I think that is a good note to end on. We've gone to our hour. If anybody has anything to share, please say it now, because otherwise I'm going to wrap us up. Okay. Well, as we do wrap up, I do want to call out a few folks in particular. As Mom mentioned, the last year was hard for Dad. He had a lot of pain he wrestled with, both physical and mental. And some folks really did step up. And I really want to thank Bonnie and Roger for being such good friends over many years, but for putting up with him on a cruise that was a singular event, I think. And for even when it was hard to look out after him for doing so. John and Cleta, who, as you heard, were such good friends to him for so long, who made it much easier for him to stay in Jacksonville, and were good friends for a very long time, even when he didn't make it easy for Cleta sometimes, I think. To Janice and Anita and Lizzie at Forsyth Court, who really went far beyond the call of what was expected and were really great friends. To Sarah, and particularly Becky, who you heard from Community Hospice. Becky really made Dad's last months bearable. He really respected her, and she really was there for him. And then in particular to Debbie, Mary, and Stephanie above all, who made it possible for Dad to live in Jacksonville on his own much longer than he would have been able to do otherwise, which he really cherished. He did not want to be in North Carolina. And when Becky asked him at one point why he thought I had insisted that he move here, he said, well, it's because he loves me. And that was it. He wanted to be here, but it wasn't possible at that point. So Stephanie, thank you for making it possible, and he trusted you with his life, and you did a great job, so thank you. So I really want to thank everybody for that. I'd like those folks I mentioned to please take the flowers home. They're here for you. And then finally, in my tradition, in my spiritual tradition, there's a song or a poem we use at moments of transition in life. I will not subject you to my singing, but I will just let you know the words are: no coming, no going, no after, no before. I hold you close to me. I release you to be so free, because I am in you and you are in me. So thank you all for being here, for remembering Jack. He's still with us. He's in us. We're part of him. He's part of us. He gave us some great things to take forward. He taught us a lot. I hope he's having a fucking good time in heaven.
Well done, Scott.
Love you all. Thanks for being here. I will send out the recording. Thank you that this actually worked. Thank you, whoever made it work. Thank you to the staff here.
Thank you, Scott.
Love you all. Be well.
Scott, thank you.
Thank you.